the causes of those types of stress or adversity could also be family stress. There could be stresses in personal life, in terms of family life, personal life. It could be after a family breakup, or it could also be after bereavement. It could be also after maybe social stressors like difficulty at work, or difficulty with a career progression. Or it could also, in fact, be after physical health problems, serious health challenges. But it's simply the ability to bounce back.
Yeah. So would you say that there are different levels of resilience then?
That's the quite an interesting thing about resilience. The fact that I wouldn't say that there are different levels of resilience. What I would say is that we do know that resilience is not a fixed thing, and that's very positive. In terms of the fact that resilience is not something that we say, oh, you inherited a resilience gene that is not good, or you inherited a resilience gene that is good. So we are not saying that. So basically, we are saying that resilience is actually something that can be developed, something that you can build on. So it's not something that one is sentenced to, and to say that, oh, when adversity comes, some people are inevitably not going to be able to cope. So that's the good thing about resilience, that it's an attribute that can be developed. It's something that we can build upon.
It's interesting you said that, because I was gonna just ask you that it's not really just a major adverse event. It could be minor things over the years.
Yeah.
And my question is this: does that mean that minor trauma could add up in the same way that just one episode of major trauma can also cause problems?
I think in terms of adversity, which might then lead to the mental well-being of an individual being compromised. Yes, it is true that it may not just be one major event. It may be a accumulation of minor events, different things that have added up over the years and that have not been effectively dealt with, that could then have an impact adversely on mental health. So indeed, it could be a combination of a few things over the course of, and that's what you find in the clinical room, in clinical consultations. Usually, we find that when we dig deep, we find that it's not just the event that has made the person to tip over, that has tipped the person over, that is actually responsible. But we find that when you take a good history, you find that other things have happened over the years. The interesting thing as well is that sometimes even those people that have experienced these life events may not in fact see them as life events. Interestingly, some positive things could actually be life events as well, like a house move. People buy a new house and they move into a new house. That's a positive thing. That's a brilliant thing. It's a good thing. However, it could also actually be a source of stress, because we know, at least in this part of the world, we know what it can entail. Even some people having a child in the family, a father becoming a father for the first time, a mother becoming a mother for the first time. That's a positive thing, but also it can be associated with it can become a stressor that is then associated with mental problems if it's not well dealt with.
Wow. That is interesting, because when people talk about adversity, they're always talking about negative things.
Yeah.
People don't actually think about actually getting a promotion at work, moving into a new job, going into the executive arm of your work, or anything like that could actually be a source of stress to people.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for clarifying that. So, would we say that resilience is different in children as compared to adults?
To be honest, I'm not. I'm not so sure about that. Whether resilience is different in children to adults, but what I will say is that that the impact of some childhood experiences sometimes may actually have a long-term effect on the mental well-being of the person when they become an adult.
Okay.
So, for instance, we do know that somebody who has suffered adversity in childhood in terms of either emotional neglect
Yeah.
or physical neglect or even sexual abuse could then that can then form a background for them to develop mental problems in later in their life. And in fact, we do know that at least 50% of mental problems that people encounter in adulthood have actually have their roots in childhood. They might have started with symptoms in childhood. So that's something that is very crucial, that childhood is a very, very crucial period of life. And things that sometimes people take for granted in terms of even early losses.
Okay.
For instance, if somebody has been unfortunate to lose one of their parents while they were young, while they were children, that's a very major life event.
Absolutely.
And if it's not properly dealt with, that can then make them more predisposed to mental difficulties when they grow up. So, and bullying is another one that people just think it's not a big deal. Bullying is another thing that in childhood could actually then predispose somebody to developing mental problems later in life.
Yeah. It's actually interesting that other things that actually are normal that we talk about, like sibling rivalry and things like that, also can.
Absolutely.
But looking at it in terms of the negative impact, is it possible that these life experiences can also help people develop more resilience than others? Because if some people have adverse childhood experiences, for example, obviously they will manage it one way or the other. And over time, as they grow up, they might actually develop more resilience compared to somebody who has an adult experience or an adult event. Am I correct to say that?
Yes, that's a very interesting observation, actually, because we do know that resilience has a lot to do with the mindset of the person who is suffering that adversity or that experience. So we do know that people who develop resilience have a particular mindset about how they view adversity. And one of them is that we know that people who develop resilience and who tend to overcome adversity do not see themselves as victims. So seeing yourself with a can-do mindset, or that you are going to be an overcomer, you are going to overcome this particular adversity, is actually a very positive thing in developing resilience. And that's something very, very crucial. So not saying we do also know that people who develop resilience actually see adversity as something that is common to everybody. You know, there are people who it's not very helpful for mental health to go around with a victim mentality, always thinking that based on one's race, based on one's color, based on one's gender, that or based on where one was raised, or based on one's social background, that one is at a disadvantage. When one internalizes that message, it becomes a problem, because one is already starting on the back foot. One is already feeling that. But the reality is that in life, if we live, for everyone who's lived long enough, adversity happens to everyone. One way or the other. It depends on the shade, the color, the size. Whatever shade, color, size it comes in, adversity is common to all. Absolutely. At some point, people will experience challenges in their lives.
So in a way, really, it's not majorly, if we look at it, that we can actually attribute mental health disorders or things like that to the event itself, rather than it's the reaction of the person or the way the person actually manages themselves when the event happens. All right, thank you so much. Okay, so what would you say, or let me rephrase that, would you say there is a role for personal identity and mindset in developing resilience?
Oh yes, I think there is certainly a role for that. I think that as parents, as mentors, as coaches, as teachers, as ministers, I think it's very important, particularly for our young people, to help them to feel comfortable in who they are. That no matter how they were born, where they were born, and where they were born into, it's very important for them to feel comfortable in their skin, and to know that there is nothing that is at a disadvantage about how they were born or where they were born. That's something, and to have a sense of personal identity that is not based on performance, but is based on the fact that every human being on earth was born with everybody has their own peculiar talents, peculiar personalities, and peculiar skill sets. And that does not in any way make you it doesn't put you at any disadvantage. It's just the way you've been created, and you are fashioned really well equipped for the work you've got to do here. So,
wow,
that's important.
Yeah. And I've had you say something very, very, very intriguing. You've said that somebody cannot actually function more than their inner image.
That's true. Yeah.
That is actually a powerful statement. And I don't want it to be only me that will kind of understand that phrase. Will you expand on what you mean by that a bit?
Right. So I said that it is difficult, in fact, almost impossible for anyone to consistently outperform their inner image of themselves. So it's impossible for anyone to consistently perform above the mental picture that they have of themselves. And that's why, and we have illustrations all through. A very typical example that people commonly give, and that research has shown, is people who win the lottery. It's been found that people who win the lottery win maybe millions of pounds or millions of dollars, that after a few years, within a 10-year period or so, that they find that they are back to the same financial state that they were previously before winning the lottery. I mean, that's staggering. It is staggering. So it means that in their minds, if somebody has a mentality that they are poor, and if there's a poverty in their mind, in the mindset, no matter how much money is coming into the hands or flowing through the person's hands, or even in that person's bank account, it's only a matter of time before that mindset takes over and takes that person back to where they started from.
Wow.
So it's very important that we examine our mindset, the images that we have of ourselves. But importantly is also the fact that this mindset, these images of ourselves and our identities actually come a lot from experiences of childhood. So for people who have experienced abuse, who have experienced neglect, who have been maltreated in childhood, many times those people still have those images being replayed in their minds, and they still carry the images of the aggressor or the images of the person who treated them, who was unkind to them, as a personal image. And when that happens, if that's not addressed, it makes people perform well below what they should really, at what level they should be performing.
Wow. And that means I always look at it that it's, if we have an identity, for some of us who are Christians, who will say our identity in Christ, knowing who we are in Christ, that is the foundation on which we build our mindset on. And our mindset now influences our habits and the way we look at life, which will also influence the way we react to events and adverse effects and traumatic experiences that we have in life. So what's the connection between mindset and creativity? Because I know I've read a few documents or write-ups that says that there is actually being very creative, having a creative mind helps you to manage adverse events better.
That's true. So we do know that people who are resilient, people who overcome adversity, who tend to bounce back, tend to have a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. So in that regard, they believe that this is a challenge, and it's true that this is a difficult period for me, but there are certain things I need to learn from this situation, and it can actually make me a better person than before the situation. And I think COVID-19 is COVID-19 pandemic is quite a very case. It's a very relevant case in point, because the reality is that over this lockdown period, There are people who have developed skills that they never really thought that they had.
Yeah.
And whilst this adversity, the COVID-19 situation is a pandemic that is common to everyone. We found out that there are people who are going to go back to the workplace and their colleagues are not going to recognize them because of the skill sets that they are bringing back. Because the person who went into the lockdown is not the person who came out of the lockdown.
Wow.
But at the same time, you may also have the other side of the coin in which people have gone into the lockdown and they've come out worse off in terms of so it's about what one is focusing on. It's about having a growth mindset in terms of I can do this that I'm able to overcome this adversity and that I can learn skills that are important to actually overcome and move in my life.
Yeah. And we also see this pan out in people who recover from chronic illnesses like cancer and things like that. That some people, the recovery, it depends on their mindset and how things are doing. Just for our viewers, please, you can post your questions to Dr. Ajayi on the Facebook page, and I'll be very, very pleased and happy to ask him those questions, and I'm sure he will do justice to them. All right. What's the role of talent, hard work, and preparedness in resilience? Because some of us have a mindset in which we are prepared for anything that is thrown at us, whereas some people are so laid back that they actually are not, they're just not ready for anything that is difficult.
Yeah, I think that that's a very relevant question as well, in terms of the fact that if we are prepared to put in the hard work, and we've got the basics that it takes, somebody who is prepared to work hard, who is prepared to put in the hard work, and he has moderate talent, or somebody who has some talent, may actually find out that they outsmart the person who has talent and they are not prepared to put in hard work. So somebody says that talent is cheap, but it's the hard work, is honing those skills, is putting in the hours, is learning from mentors, is really trying to study to show. Even the Bible says that we should study to show ourselves approved. So it's all those things that actually helps us at times of adversity to be able to move on to the next level. So indeed, hard work is something very important, and the mindset there is that rather than see the adversity, to see the opportunity, because that's also something very crucial, that people who eventually overcome adversity can see that, okay, yes, this is a challenging period, but there must be an opportunity here. And that's why I say that a lot of things that are working in science, it's have a lot of their foundation in scriptures. We know that we know that the Bible tells us, for instance, that all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to His purpose. So if we focus on the opportunities, on the fact that there must be something good out of this, we tend to get that, because we tend to get what we focus on.
Yes. So in terms of people who manage adverse events very well and the ones who don't, would you say it's just probably due to one particular factor, or could it be multifactorial?
I think it's multifactorial. I think that the way we respond to adversity is a combination of a number of things. I think it's a combination of the genes that we've inherited in some way, because some people are more naturally calm in adversity than others are. Some people are prone to be anxious normally anyway, and that's in their natural makeup. However, in addition to that, there's also something that is called modeling. Modeling is about learning from others. So modeling is really about the role models that we've had in our lives, also particularly in childhood. So we tend to respond to adversity in the way we've been taught by our parents or by the primary caregivers who raised us. So the way we've seen others do it is the way we will naturally also do it. So there's the fact that there's modeling, there's the way there is what we've inherited. Of course, there's also the fact that we know that very clearly that we know that faith is a good thing in adversity. We know that faith is very well associated with resilience. We know that research shows that prayer, meditation, and I want to qualify meditation. Every time I say it, I qualify it. I'm talking very clearly about meditation on scriptures. I'm talking about when I'm talking about meditation, that's what I'm referring to. Whatever things are true, whatever things are honest. So we know that resilience prayer, prayer meditation is associated with resilience, bouncing back. We know that social support is also associated with bouncing back. That people, and all of these are things that we find commonly in church. And one of the things that people have wondered about the link between resilience and faith communities is that people who have a faith in a God who cares for them actually can have some hope even when things are going downhill. And hope is a very crucial thing in resilience. Hope is the fact that tomorrow is going to be better than today. It's true that today there's a rough time today, but then this is not going to be a permanent feature of my life. I'm going to overcome this. And so I think that's the close link. That's the link between resilience, faith, and resilience and faith.
Yeah, which is why hopelessness and helplessness for us as mental health workers is actually a sign that things might really be bad. And but we know that's associated with people who begin to look at life as if it's not worth living. Okay, thank you for that. When we look at how we manage relationships, I know one of the things that we all talk about is that the family is the building block of the community, for which the church is the community itself. What is the role of the family in helping people develop resilience?
Right. So that's also a very important question. The role of the family is a very crucial one, because one of the things I've emphasized today is about childhood experiences. And a lot of childhood experiences are formed at home. That's the place where the child gets their first experience of life. That's the place where the child develops a view of themselves in relation to others and to the world. And to be honest with you, that's one of the most fundamental things that is very crucial to us having a healthy mental health and having a healthy sense of well-being. Your view of yourself in relation to others and in relation to the world. And so it's important for parents, and also not just parents, but teachers, to caregivers, to mentors, to coaches, to ministers of the gospel, to be aware of this, that young people are people. It's like when you have a young person, when you are responsible for a young person, it's like you have a piece of clay in your hands, and the way you mold that piece of clay before it sets can actually be crucial to their future. So that's it's really very important, and so it's very important for parents and all the other people I've mentioned, who are caregivers, to help young people to develop a sense of well-being in themselves, to develop a sense of identity, to develop a healthy sense of identity. That they are not no less than the other person. There's something that makes them less than the other person, either because of their background or the color of their skin or their race or their gender, whatever. They are as valuable a human being as every other person in the group. And that's something that is very important, because that's what they're going to take into their adult life. And that's going to be very, very important, not only to their mental, but also to their well-being.
I think that is very, very important, because for people who have the opportunity for nurturing children, caring for children, parents, giving a child a voice is important. making them be part of family decisions is important.
True.
Allowing them to be able to express themselves. And it's still part of the formative year. It's almost like a clay. When they talk and they don't talk right, you can mold that way they talk into something positive. But if they don't, by the time they grow older, they are subdued emotionally, psychologically, and even they become a vulnerable person in the society. And they now have this victim mentality or mindset that you talked about earlier on, which is not helpful in any way, especially now that all of us are facing something that we've never prepared for.
Absolutely.
So I don't think there's anybody that they are 2020 planner and have put COVID-19 in there. That this is how I'm going to deal with COVID-19. Just like one of my uncles will say that your 2020 year planner is useless for now. And so that is it. Life can do anything at all, but the way we react to what life is throwing to us is determined by our relationship, like you mentioned. And I think relationship can also be individual and can also be family and can be collective. Because when you talk about my relationship with you now is individual, but I could have relationship with my family members, and which could be my own person, and then with the community, with church. And I know that the scripture that says that we should not neglect the assembly of the saints is crucial, because there is health. There is health benefit from that. And so we don't, anybody that feels, which is one of the things that the lockdown is giving us now, isn't it? That everybody is locked up, lonely. Thank you so much, Dr. Ajayi. Let's move a bit more towards looking at some solution-based discussion. When we look at ourselves as human beings, a lot of people, like you would say, you talked about the opportunity. I know you've mentioned the nowhere and now here terminology in the past, which I will leave you to mention. But in terms of inclusiveness and exclusiveness, if you can tie that to that phrase for us, it will be extremely useful.
Okay, right. So in terms of being inclusive, one of the things that we do know that research tells us about people who also develop resilience or who bounce back is that they understand that there is a need to ask for help. So in recovery from adversity, it's difficult for somebody to be a one-man island and to recover well. So it's very important to bring in other people into that recovery process. And the only way to bring in that other people is to actually acknowledge the need for help. And sometimes in Black ethnic minority communities, or even sometimes in church communities, that's not something we like to do. Everybody wants to give the impression that everything is okay, and I'm okay by myself. I'm a one-man island. But we do know that social support is actually a very crucial thing. But sometimes people don't know that other people need support, so they are not able to give it. So I think the crucial point to drive home in that case is it's okay to ask for help. And there is no one who's achieved anything of meaning in their lives who can say that they didn't get some help at some point in their lives. So asking for help is a very, very important thing. In reference to what you said about looking at opportunities, I did say a while back, I said that when you spell NOWHERE, that's N, and you put opportunity is before it, opportunity is NOWHERE. It depends on where you want to split the NOWHERE. If you split it at NO, it means opportunity is nowhere. However, if you split it at W, it means opportunity is now here. And it's just about mindset. It's about the way we see adversity. That in every adversity, there's always plenty of opportunities as well. and we get what we focus on.
Great, great. Which is why I think for parents and caregivers that are listening to us tonight, they need to understand the importance of the family structure and need to understand even just minor family discourse on a regular basis can be detrimental to a child's life. And so we must not just neglect all those little things that we think doesn't matter, because they add up eventually. And some might have a negative impact on the life of the child. So that's why it's very, very important for us to begin to look at the family structure and see how we can bring some organization to it. Thank you for that. You talked about asking. Yeah, sorry, go on, Dr. Ajayi.
Just whilst you're on that point, the other thing to bear in mind is that we do know that marital disharmony as well as domestic violence is a very, very damaging thing on the mental health and mental well-being of young people. When young people witness that, it's like a time bomb waiting to explode in their future. So that's also something to bear in mind, that when children have witnessed domestic violence or they've endured chronic marital disharmony of their parents, or that's a very damaging thing on mental health. Yeah.
And just to clarify, there is a myth out there that I would like to clarify while we're still on that. Evidence does not show what the world thinks. We think that boys do better, but that is contrary to the evidence we have in research. Actually, most of the research show that boys, marital discord and disharmony actually affects boys more than girls. And so we pay a lot of attention on the girls and try and manage and do all those things. But really, we need to pay a lot of attention on the boys, because really it has a major impact on their emotional and mental well-being. So we need to be very, very careful about that. And when you talk about asking for help, Dr. Ajayi, in my own experience of being a psychiatrist, and also I've counseled a lot of people in different parts of the world, one of the things I find is that people think that asking for help is a sign of weakness.
Yeah, true.
I don't know whether you can break that down for us a bit.
Yes, that's very true, that in our communities, people tend to think that asking for help is a sign of weakness, which is really a sad way of looking at things. The reason being that we do know that early intervention in mental problems of any sort is associated with a better recovery. So when there's early intervention with mental difficulties, we know that recovery is better. That people make, when you look at all the metrics, it shows us that people who get intervention very quickly. So actually, asking for help is actually a sign of strength, because somebody who is asking for help is somebody who is self-aware. Somebody who is able to reflect and say that, look, I think I've reached the end of my resources now. I now need professional help. And I think the other thing to also remember is that one of the reasons why people don't ask for help is because of the stigma associated with mental problems. People think that they're going to get, people think that they're going to be labeled, or they are going to be stigmatized. However, the flip side of that coin is, if people don't then get help on time, what happens is eventually the things that people are trying to conceal is going to become public knowledge anyway. So it's better to get help and address things very, very earlier on than to wait for things to get out of hands. That's one. Secondly, one of the other misconceptions that people have is that if they ask for help with their mental health problems, particularly to do with people who are parents, that they feel that their children will be taken into care. That's also not true, because we do know that the aim of social services is for children to really stay with their parents, to be raised by their parents. However, it's only when it's a last resort measure that every other thing has been tried that care proceedings is considered. However, if people are engaging with support and they are demonstrating that they are really receiving help with their mental problems, this is a very unlikely outcome.
Which is why most social services will want a secured emotional base for the child, which is the best place is with their parents. Unless they're unable to make that happen, that's when they begin to think about other options. Absolutely. Thank you. So viewers, asking for help is not a sign of weakness. So we've talked about asking for help, Dr. Ajayi. Where do we ask for help? Who can we ask for help?
Okay. Good. That's a very, very valid question, because the interesting thing is a number of people know that if they have physical problems, that they go to their GPs, but people don't actually realize that if in the UK, that the GP, the general practitioner, is also the first port of call when there's a mental problem. So the GP is the very first place to go to. People think, oh, they're general practitioners at the end of the day, but there are lots of general practitioners who actually have a sound grounding and background in psychiatry, in mental difficulties. Not only so, the way mental services are organized is such that mental services are organized in such a way that even if the GP feels that they are not able to support the support that is needed for this person is outside the remit of their expertise or their experience, what they will usually do is to refer to secondary mental services or specialist mental services. So the answer to that question is the GP, the general practitioner, is the first port of call. And the interesting thing is that a large percentage of mental difficulties are actually handled by the GP. They are treated by the GP. Common things like anxiety, panic attacks, generalized anxiety, even most depression. It's only when depression is difficult to treat that GPs would then pass on that information or make a referral to mental services like yourself and myself.
Yeah. So really, we is it really true that people who have difficulties or cannot manage adverse or life events properly would eventually or all the time have a mental health disorder?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Yes, because if somebody is encountering adversity and they have all the support that they need, for instance, somebody has been bereaved or somebody has lost their job, and they are well supported, and also they are supported not only in a social way, but also to help them to see the possibilities and to help them to give hope, to sustain their hope at those periods, then they might not necessarily end up with mental problems. So it's not inevitable that somebody who has suffered adversity will eventually end up with a mental difficulty. No. In fact, most people bounce back.
Yeah.
It's the exception to the rule. People develop mental difficulties as a result of stress. It's only when it's not addressed, it's only when it's not dealt with, or when it's not recognized, because that's the other point, recognition. A number of people are actually suffering from mental difficulties, but they don't recognize it. And because they don't recognize it, they don't get help. Or there are people who are suffering from mental difficulties and they recognize it, but they are denying it and also not asking for help. And both of those situations can then make things escalate and end up into severe difficulties.
Yeah, thank you so much. One of the things that people have said, and I've read in a few recent write-up and article, is that children especially can view this lockdown as a kind of bereavement in quote. I know that you mentioned bereavement, and sometimes I think one of the issues with people is that they don't seek help when things like that happen. Maybe we'll be able to talk about the children later on, but for the adults who actually go through a bereavement and refuse to seek help, I know you've talked about early intervention, which I think will also apply in this case. So it's important for people to understand that when you lose somebody, even though it's something that people do have regularly, but also if you need help, seek help for some counseling if you do. Dr.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's yes, that's certainly a very important thing, because we do know that bereavement, particularly when it's a close family member, it's a very difficult thing, and we do know that usually people react to bereavement differently, but we know that particularly we know that some people are more prone to develop what is called an abnormal grief reaction than other people. So people who already have an existing mental health problem may find it more difficult to deal with bereavement than others. Um, People who also have multi other things happening in their lives. So maybe there's a job loss, then there's a loss of a dear family member. So when there are other things going on, that might also make it difficult for them for recovery. The other thing we do also know is that people who have had difficult relationships is interesting. For instance, what research shows is that sometimes when somebody's divorced spouse dies, or somebody's aggrieved dad, they've not had a good relationship with their father or their mother, and those people pass away, people would expect that they would then suddenly that they should be able to easily get on with their lives and say, oh yes, we never really got on anyway. But the interesting thing is that research actually shows that those people are prone to developing an abnormal grief reaction. And the reason is because they are not only grieving now that they've had a loss, they are grieving what will never be. Because that means that somebody will have a good relationship with their dad or their mom, and the dad or the sibling has now passed away. It's never, you can't reverse the end of that clock. So, but in terms of getting help, it's good to get spiritual help, and I'm never opposed to that. But sometimes as well, there is also a need to get professional help, and bereavement counseling might be required for some people. For some people, following bereavement, there may also be associated anxiety. Sometimes it's an anxiety disorder, and sometimes it's also depression. And getting help in that regard is also very important.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That is actually very, very important for us to take away tonight. That if I can add on to that, that men are always thinking they're Superman. But really, when you look at men, we are the least gender that goes to our GP for help. We don't seek help for medical problems, and that means that we miss out on that early intervention. By the time they grab those things away from us, it's already in the chronic phase, which means that the likelihood of full recovery is minimal, or well, I won't say minimal, is reduced in a way as to if they will have gone to see their doctors or sought help early enough. So every time people get beaten up by some adverse event, they rush back into themselves. But some people struggle to come back out.
Okay.
And how common is people going into deep depression in times like this? Because we need to build resilience in a time like this. There are job loss, financial uncertainty, economic meltdown, and all sorts of things happening that people can't even comprehend at the moment. And so we are thinking about the aftermath of COVID-19, that a lot of social, mental, emotional, and this will happen. So how do we do that?
So that's yeah, it's a genuine concern, and whilst we can focus on the things that we can change, I think the crucial intervention here is to identify the things that we can change and focus on those things. So we do know, for instance, that exercise is good for mental health. We do know that at this time of the lockdown, there's a risk to just be cooked up at home and not just bother at all, because there's no need to go to work, and some people might not even want to leave the four walls of their homes. But we now know that with the easing of the lockdown, and in fact, all from the outset, the government regulation was that people should still engage in exercise. So we do know that exercise is very good for mental well-being, which is very crucial. The other thing that we do know, which can be a challenge at this time, is also that because of the lack of structure, because one is now at home from awakening to going to bed, there's a tendency not to attend to one's dietary needs appropriately, in terms of, because the food is there, one just continues to eat and not regulate that. And we do know that a healthy diet is also associated on the long term with a healthy mind, because the mind and the body function together. So it's important to pay attention to that as well. The other thing that is important to pay attention to is actually that in this lockdown period, there are people, for instance, who know that they do not have a job to go back to. And that's something that they cannot change, because maybe they've been told by their employers. However, what somebody can focus on is to develop skills in this period that may actually position them into a good place, such that after the lockdown, they've been able to develop skills that might actually put them at an advantage in the workplace. So really, it's about looking at, really focusing on the things that one can change, rather than be overwhelmed by the things that one cannot change. The other thing that is also important at this time is to take small baby steps. When one looks at, oh yeah, I've got to start all over again, the marketplace, maybe somebody is in their 50s, suddenly they've been with the same employer maybe for 20 years, suddenly they now find that they no longer have a job, and they're thinking, where do I start from? The place to start is to take small baby steps. Every single day, taking a little step. It could be from brushing up the CV. It could be from, there are several online courses that are available currently. Several opportunities to actually develop oneself and to make oneself more desirable in the marketplace. So really, the message there is that whilst we can't change some things, let's focus on the things that we can change, and let's begin to take action regarding those. And very closely linked to that is the aspect of gratitude, because we do know that everyone who is alive and well at this time on earth has something to be grateful for, because we know that COVID-19 has been a very difficult period, and sadly, there are people that have been taken up by it. So we know that a lot of research actually shows that gratitude is good for mental well-being, is good for productivity, and that just focusing on the things that are going well at the moment and being grateful for them may actually be a positive thing. So one of the things that I encourage people to do in this time is to actually keep a gratitude journal. At the end of each day or at the end of each week, to write down the things that have gone well that week. And that includes the fact that one has one's thinking faculties right, and that one has health.
The fact that we know that there is a problem is actually good, because that means you have a sound mind, a rational mind, to be able to know that some things are wrong and some things are good. Just to add on to that, I think one of the other things that people don't realize is that even though it's a difficult period, but there's help out there. If you've lost your job, contact your HR, contact your union, find out what is available, what you're entitled to. Don't just sit down and just bury yourself under the blanket. Ask questions, the right one, and ask about your entitlements, speak to your age, and all those things. They are quite helpful, because we, like you said, a lot of people don't realize that the only thing you actually have control over is your own circle of control.
Yeah.
I can't influence anything else. And if I can manage that properly, it's most likely that when the external bit come, I will manage it better than to just let everything go and just leave everything open and let that invade my mind, my thoughts, my mood, and things like that. You talked about gratitude, Dr. Ajayi. and I've had you talk about and link Thanksgiving to creativity. What is that all about?
Yeah. So we do know that when you are grateful, when you look at the things that are working well in your life,
Yeah.
uh, and you can identify them. One, it helps you to identify more things that are working well, but also we know that your mindset, the way you approach adversity or challenges or difficulties, can actually either shut off your ability to think through the problem and find solutions, or open up your creativity to find solutions. And being grateful, looking at the things that are working well in the situation, is actually associated with being creative, being able to think up the solutions. Because when one thinks about the doom and the gloom, we know that shuts it. It's just like it shuts off. It shuts off the thinking. It prevents one from being able to see the possibilities. It's like one can then not see the trees from the wood. And so gratitude is a very, very important thing. And in fact, I encourage people to check up research on gratitude. It's quite a lot of research out there. And that's also, interestingly, it's science agreeing with scriptures again. Very interesting.
Yes. Yeah. Thanksgiving and intentionality. I've heard you speak a lot. So because Dr. Ajayi is a writer, and he drops these phrases when he's talking, and I'm always very keen to get them down, because I know I'll be able to catch up with him later to explain it properly. Well, you've linked Thanksgiving to needing to be intentional. Yeah. What does that mean?
So like I said earlier about keeping a gratitude journal. So it's not just aligned. Really, it's like one is collecting something. You know, when you collect a particular item, maybe there are people who collect shoes, there are people who collect bags, there are people who collect antiques, there are people who collect cars. When you collect those things, people collect stamps. When you collect those things, you actually go out to find them. So in your daily life, you are looking out for these things. You are looking out for something to collect. So you might be going to the, for instance, to the Sunday markets when they operated, and we are hoping that they'll be back again soon. So you are looking at those, and you have an eye out for those things. And it's the same way in terms of gratitude. Being intentional means that you are actually living your life, looking out for the things that are working well. And sometimes they're the little things of life. The fact that sometimes when I come indoors on a winter, on a cold winter night, when I've been to work all day, and I come indoors and it's a warm place to live in, and it's a comfortable place, I'm grateful for that. Because I do know that it's not automatic, because there are people who would rather come into a warm place after you've had this work, but there's no warm place to go to. So it's the little things of life. Is the fact that we still have our breath, to smell the flowers, to hear the running of the flowing streams, and being in touch with those things. Personally, one of the things I do is that I enjoy walking, and I enjoy being in touch with nature. And that's something very positive as well for mental health. So intentionality is really about looking out for the good things, the little simple things of life that we a lot of times take for granted, and also then writing them down. Because the act of actually writing them down, actually, it opens you up. It just opens you up to more and more things to be grateful about.
Thank you so much for that. And really, when we talk about gratitude, a lot of us wake up in the morning, we take a deep breath, and then we're off. Now you need to know where you are taking the deep breath, whether it's with a mask on or not, because we weren't aware of that, but now we are very aware of it. So that is something to be grateful for. Even the fact that we have a sound mind, because scientists will say you have about 70 to 80,000 thoughts a day, of which about 85% of it are negative. So the fact that you can actually manage those and go through a day is something to be grateful for. I think, like the Bible says, that if we know how to number our days, that is, if we're able to dig deep, we'll be able to find something from that well to be able to thank God for. Thank you so much for that. In terms of one of the things that actually will cause a lot of stress for people that I know. That we've mentioned the issue of job loss and things like that. And actually, the fact that how do I make a success out of the next thing I'm gonna do?
Okay.
And I know you've explained that in a very, very simple way in terms of the way that athletes live their life and what the intention are. If you can share the light on that for our viewers, I will appreciate it.
Yeah. So performance athletes, a lot of research has been done in terms of the psychology of winning of performance athletes. And one of the things that they found out among the people who who win and people who are gold medalists, people who win the medals, is that they ask them, particularly the people who are sprinters or people who run in races, they ask them at the starting point, tell us what are the type of dialogues that are going on in your mind at that point when you are starting your race. At the very point, because just before the bell goes or what's the thing going through your mind? And they found out that interestingly, a large percentage of them said that at the starting point, the thing that is going through my mind, even though they haven't run the race yet, the thing that is going through my mind is seeing myself finishing the race, winning it, and being on the podium, bowing down to receive my medal. And that's telling. So basically, they haven't started the race at all, but in their mind's eye, the race has been done, they've won, and they're receiving their medals. Very, very interesting, very powerful. So, that I think intentionality in that regard, being really focusing on the end, even though one has not started, is very crucial. And also the fact that as long as we have the aptitude for it, we can actually learn any skill. It's just that we need to put the effort into it. It might take hours and hours, but eventually one will get to where one is going.
So why would, like you said in one of your talks that I've listened to, because I do listen to you a lot, so I get you on a lot of things that you say, and I feel that our viewers will benefit from, because when you say success is a marathon and not a sprint race, why is that? Why is it not a marathon? Why is it not a sprint race? Why is it not a 100-meter dash as compared to a 5,000-meter run? What's that?
So this is not really, I wouldn't say this is really psychiatry, but this is my experience from life. That I think it was Bill Gates who said that most people overestimate what they can achieve in 1 year, but they underestimate what they can achieve in 10 years. The import of that story is that most people don't think about success as a long haul, but in reality, all the people that are winning in their games, in their professions, in their ministries, everyone who is doing something that is significant and remarkably contributing to society and community today, if you sit them down and they're going to be honest with you, they will tell you that there was no sudden success. There was no magic bullet that got them where they are today. It's always one little step after the other, one simple step after the other, and it's nothing. There's no magic bullet. There's no big step. It was just one simple step after the other. And I think there are two things about that. One of them is consistency. Sometimes people give up when the results are not forthcoming very quickly. And the challenge, of course, is also that we've got a media that tells us that everything is microwave. Everything is a drive-through. What we are bombarded with, if we are not careful, is a drive-through success script that only belongs to Hollywood. It doesn't happen in real life. And I think it's important for young people to hear this and hear well, that success takes hard work. You've got to do the work. And the fact that you're a Christian does not exempt you from working hard.
Absolutely.
I think it's very important to say that as well, that the fact that our faith does not, in fact, our faith should encourage us to work hard, because we know rather than promoting us to be encouraging us to be lazy. So that's what I mean. That marathon sprints are 100%. They're 100-meter dashes. It's done in less than a minute. Less than a minute, it's all done. But a marathon takes time, and you've got to keep doing it. And it might stretch you, but you keep doing it.
So in a way, success needs focus. It needs perseverance. It needs that long suffering. It needs people to just hang in there, to ensure that they don't miss out on that last bit. Because most people put a lot of effort in, and they bow out at the last minute when the success is almost about to hit, and that is actually sad to know. So really, one of the things that is important, again, which you've mentioned before, and I know you've done this time for years and years, is about mentorship. What's the role and importance of that, of mentorship, and really having people to guide you through life?
Thanks for that question. So one of my popular saying is this, that you can learn from mistakes in two ways. You can either learn from your own mistakes, or you can save yourself the agony and learn from the mistake of somebody who tells you that's not the way to do it. And if I was going to choose, I would rather learn from the mistake of somebody who has done it the wrong way, and they tell me, don't bother going that route because it's going to cost you. And that's what mentoring does for us. It actually helps us to, it gives us the guidance and prevents us from going down the rabbit hole and putting our lives in a corner. So mentorship helps us to, I think it gives us a push on our pursuits, in our purposes, and it helps us to actually be able to achieve those things quicker than we would have. Because we are guided from making certain mistakes that can be very devastating.
Young people, because I've also worked with young people for years in the field of medicine, and supported them in other areas also. And I know that you pastor the youth church, and you do this whole thing with young people and mentor and all that. And one of the things that young people don't have is the patience. And when you say to them, look, I remember young people that myself and my wife have counseled before, and you tell them that, why don't you try and volunteer? I said, how much are they going to pay me? No, they're not paying you anything. That's what it's called, volunteering. And they said, no, I can't do that. They don't want to go through anything that is difficult. And so for the young ones listening to us tonight, you can hear what we're saying. It's important. Life is not just something that goes on that smoothly. You need to put in the hard work. You need to be focused. You need to be prepared so that you don't miss opportunities when they come. But you said writing down goals. One of the things that young people don't do is actually sitting down and planning. And they just want things to just fall in place. And when it doesn't fall in place, they're upset. But really, when you're not prepared for what life, everybody's going through life now. For example, the young ones now who are doing A-levels, who are doing GCSEs, who are going into uni and all that, things have completely changed for them. They're not prepared for it, but they will manage it differently because of what we've been talking about tonight, resilience, and how they've managed themselves over the years. So when we talk about being able to achieve our goals, apart from subjecting ourselves to people who can guide us, what are the other factors that you think is necessary? Because a lot of us do things because there's nobody to report. We just do things. I don't have any, whether I achieve it or not, it doesn't matter. It's me that is making the plan. But sometimes that causes a long delay in us achieving our goals, as opposed to when we have a plan in place and somebody that can ask us where we are at and things like that. Can you please just explain to the viewers in a way, because I know you've talked about that passionately and I've heard you talk about your passion, and I think it's important for our young ones, even the parents, to hear about this, because a lot of parents actually are living their life through their children as opposed to actually listening to the children, finding out what they want to do, And because I feel that if that is the case, they will work at it better than being forced into something they don't want to do. What are your views about that, Dr. Ajayi?
Yeah. Other than mentorship that we have talked about, you've talked about hard work, perseverance, patience, and just honing one's skills, trying to make sure that one reads, that one is very conversant with what's happening in one's field. The other thing, of course, is that it's also important to have an accountability partner, somebody that you accountable to. We do know that in all spheres of life, from going to the gym to following a healthy diet, to writing a term paper, to meeting deadlines at work, we know that when people are accountable to somebody, somebody who is rooting for you, somebody who is going to ask you that, oh, did you actually get that done? Or somebody who is going to say, oh, we are going to meet at the gym, or we're going to meet up for a run. I know when COVID-19, the COVID-19 era might not suit some of the things I'm saying now, but the reality is that there is life after COVID-19. We know that we are the lockdown is going to be over, and life is going to return to what we maybe in a different way, but we know that things are going to get ticking again. So having an accountability partner is something very important. Somebody who is like your body, somebody who is tagging along with you and saying, oh, let's do this together, we can do this together, you encourage me and I encourage you. And so it's not just about mentoring in terms of somebody who is superior to you or somebody who is further along the way to you, but also somebody who is probably at the same level as yourself, and you are both encouraging each other. So I think that's another thing to add to the mix in terms of getting things done.
Also, I think as we're rounding up, I'm not gonna let you go unless you talk about kindness to self. What is it about being kind to self? What is it about it?
Okay, so just in summary, the mental health awareness week was May 18th to May 24th in the UK, and the theme for that week was kindness matters. And some of the things that was talked about was about the power of kindness in the impact it has on mental health. During a research survey that was done, in fact, of the press about April 2020, so it's just about a month ago, the research showed that 2 or 3 adults in the UK felt that if somebody was kind to them, it had a positive impact on their mental health. About an equal number also felt, about an equal percentage, about 62% or so, felt that not only was being a giver, a recipient of kindness, a positive thing on mental health, that also being a recipient, a giver of kindness. So it's not just about receiving kindness, it's also about giving kindness, which is quite interesting. So basically, so what research is saying, which supports scriptures, is that being good is good for you. So it's good to be good. That's what research is saying. That really, and in terms of being kind to self, the reality is that we also do know that a lot of people that research also showed that people feel that if you are not good to yourself, it might impact on your ability to be good to other people. That if you are not really kind to yourself, it might impact on your ability of being kind to other people.
That's also scripture. So it is. So the kind of image one builds about oneself, and I know a lot of, in our own field, we find a lot of people saying to us that I just don't like myself. I'm just doing this because I want to make myself suffer and all sort of other things. So that is actually very, very important for us, that what we feel about ourselves. We talked about self-image at the beginning, that our self-image is quite important. And so for the young ones, please don't build your identity around social media.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's a dangerous thing to do. Don't build your self-image along social media, the number of likes that they give you. It makes no difference. It does nothing to your life. It doesn't make you in any way successful. Because the reason is that those things are something that people can take away from you.
Absolutely.
But what you build within yourself, nobody can take away your inner image that you have of yourself. Whether they like you or don't like you, it doesn't change. So that is why it's important for the young ones, because I know when we begin to get out of this, one of the issues we're probably going to have is how we manage the young minds. But I'm trusting the Lord will help us with that. In closing, really, if we talk about, if you can just summarize for us, Dr. Ajayi, if you don't mind, just briefly, what will you say, again, resilience and what we need to do to manage adverse events as we close, so that just to summarize what you've been saying today, if you don't mind.
Okay. So, like we've said, resilience is simply bouncing back after adversity, and that adversity could be trauma, it could be a tragedy, it could also be a threat, or it could be stress at work, at home, or with physical health. And we do know that the mindset with which we approach those adversities is a very crucial determinant of how things pan out. We know that the best way to approach those challenges is to have a growth mindset, rather than the fact that throwing up our hands and thinking that we can't ever overcome those challenges. Also, not seeing ourselves as victims, and thirdly, also having a sense of gratitude and taking one simple step after the other. Let's not focus on the things that we can't change. Let's focus on the things that we can change.
So very, very important that we take those things on board as we walk through this. Make sure you focus on what I will call emotional intelligence, and that is knowing who you are and knowing the impact of your behavior on people around you, and then how to manage your relationships. Because we're all locked down together now, there is no area for us to kind of manage our emotions or go into to kind of release some of those tensions. Some people do that at work, they do that on their way to work with music and things like that, but that we can't do now. So we need to be doing things differently. Let's try and manage that family union that we're talking about. Extremely important. Dr. Ajayi has mentioned that a lot tonight about the family unit, the impact that discord and marital disharmony the impact it can have on kids and children as they grow up. Sometimes this thing might not even show up until they get married. So all of these things are quite important. So we need to be very, very careful how we manage our discussions around our children, being very wise and using wisdom to discuss very tense things and knowing where to do it and not in front of the kids and things like that. So just to make sure that we're giving our children a very good emotional base to build their own life on. And as we do that, I pray that the Lord will help us. I would like to say a big thank you to Dr. Ajayi. It's always a pleasure having you. And I'm sure we'll see you in the near future, because as we tap into the vision that the Lord has given you, you're a very, very busy man. So we thank you for giving us time tonight to have a chat with you. So viewers, that's the end of our program for today. And we've had with us today Dr. Ajayi, who is a consultant psychiatrist and also a pastor. He's the author of Footprints of Giants, and he's also he has a mentorship program for medical students, especially from the ethnic minority trying to get into uni. So a lot of his programs are out there. Very, very important. If you want to tap into that, you can always search for it. And if you want us to give you information or links, we'll do that. So as we close tonight, I wish you all a very good evening. And this has been Health Matters with Dr. Olaniniyi Ajayi. Have a lovely evening. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.